I introduced a new self-assessment strategy to my class using a bunch of ducks. And I gotta say, for the amount of effort that I had to put in for it, pretty surprising stuff. Because there's always so much stuff out there. There's so many self-assessment strategies that you can use in your classroom. And I've tried them all. Checkboxes, student rubrics, ticking targets, you name it, I've tried it. But I've always felt that there's such big teaching points and they don't even use them correctly. Or they wouldn't be effective enough and warrant the amount of effort that I put in. So I needed something very simple, but very effective. And my hope was that I would end up with a self-assessment strategy that was actually sustainable in the classroom. And I got that, but I also ended up with something completely unexpected that may have just changed my classroom forever. So today I'm going to share with you why I think you should have a powerful self-assessment tool in your classroom. And I'm also going to share with you how to set it up properly so that it's actually effective. And hopefully you get to change your classroom forever too. So why did I even need this when I've already got self-assessment happening in my classroom? Well, I was about to start a new learning sequence and it was division with the algorithm, the hard stuff. I already knew this was going to be tough because I'd already assessed them and I found that they were just all over the place. The spread was so much bigger than normal. It felt like they were all on different pages, except they were on different pages of different books. And if I was going to get the most out of this learning sequence, I'm going to need some help. But luckily, I've got a class of 30 kids. So the spread was big, but I knew that I had about 10 kids who would pick up the concept pretty quickly. So I needed to make sure that they were on track and progressing, but I also needed to make sure that I was pushing them to make sure that they were consolidating their learning and continuing to grow while I dealt with the rest of them. So I had to plan my math week. What was it going to look like, start to finish? How many goals would I need, and potentially, where did I want them to get to at the end of this? So I had my plan and I knew what my self-assessment might look like, but as a teacher who is very efficient with their time, I'm not going to put in a lot of effort to make posters and laminate things if I didn't think that this was going to be working effectively in my classroom. So I had to test it out first. But before I did that, I had to introduce my class to some Duckies. So first thing Monday morning, I taught them exactly how this was going to work. So I sat them down and I told them we're going to watch a video about ducks, but I'm not going to pause it like I normally do. We're going to watch the whole thing start to finish, and then I'm going to ask you at the end, what can you guys as a class of 11 and 12-year-olds, what can you learn from a bunch of ducks? I got them to throw all their ideas at me. What did you learn from these Duckies? And I got things like perseverance, about how all of them eventually reached the end and climbed those stairs. And there were some little hints of working together and some teamwork in there as well. And how the mother duck reminded them of me, which was lovely to hear. But there were some key things that I needed them to find. And if they didn't get to them on their own, I was going to point them out and explicitly tell them that these are the things that they need to take out of this video. And these are the key things that I wanted to hit on. The first one is that everybody works at a different pace, but we all get there in the end. Some get there faster than others, and that's okay. The second thing is that we have to try different things to succeed, just like our ducks did. They didn't keep doing the same thing over and over again. They moved around and they tried something different. The next one is that as their teacher, I will always be there for them, but I cannot do it for you. And the last point that I wanted them to realize is that we are better when we work together. So after I prepped them and we had all of those ideas on the board, we spoke about the actual reason why we watched this video. And that was to develop a system so I can see exactly how they're going, but more importantly, so the class can see how they're going climbing the stairs. So I set them to work and we watched the video again. And I already had a rough idea of how I wanted this self-assessment tool to look, but at the end of the day, it's the kids self-assessing themselves. So they needed to have a massive input in this. So while we watched, I paused it at certain points and I asked them, show me what kind of face this little guy at the bottom of the step would be making right now. And I had to rework it a lot because I got a lot of this. Too many duck faces. Don't want that. But then I got too negative and we had a lot of these ones. And we ain't about that. We're all about positivity in our class. So we had to change it a little bit and we eventually got here. And then we looked at some different points about the ducks learning and we constructed faces that each of those ducks would be making at those moments in time. And this is what we ended up with. The next part was to tie to some hand signals so that I could quickly check in with them at certain points in their learning, and then also tie meaning to what those hand signals and those faces actually meant. And finally we got here and we just left this on the board right in the middle of it so that everyone could see it throughout the day. And as a new concept to them, I didn't want to throw them in the deep end and have to think about this self-assessment strategy while they were trying to learn some new math concept. That just wouldn't be fair. So I tried to find a way early in the day that we could use this self-assessment tool in a task that they already knew very well, because we needed to make sure that it was taught and used properly before I applied it to other learning sequences. So early in the day, I got them to apply it to a simple writing task that we do every single morning as part of our routine. It was a vocab lesson where I teach them a new word and then they construct a sentence or a paragraph and practice using that word. The only thing new to them was the word, their thumbs, and their faces. So I taught them the word and then I asked them to explain what the word meant. I said to them, If you understand the word and you could confidently use it in a sentence or a paragraph, you are here. Show me this. If you have an understanding of the word, but you're still working on your sentence and you're not quite there yet, show me one thumb. And if you're somebody who gets the word, but you'd like a little bit more time to practice using it with me, give me a thumb on the side. And then finally, thumbs down if you just don't even understand what this word meant. So they show me their hands, I keep the thumbs down and some of the other on the side with me, and then the rest I send off. But I tell them, right next to the date, right next to your title, I want you to draw me one of the smiley faces to tell me exactly where you are right now in your learning. And then at the end of the lesson, after I got them to practice using that new word in sentences and paragraphs, to show me where they were at now. Had they changed their face after they had gotten some feedback from me or from a peer throughout their learning? Had their face changed from the start to the end? So we used this process over the first couple of hours of the day, and we practiced using it over and over again in different settings and in different scenarios for simple tasks and more complex tasks. Then we got to the math lesson. Normally I have them start on the floor for the beginning of a learning sequence, but today I had them working at their tables because I wanted them to reflect straight away. They already had been exposed to division before, but now this was a new step of using the process of an algorithm to divide numbers. So what I wanted them to do was put division and the date and then immediately reflect on their own understanding. Where were they at for using the algorithm to solve division? And I got a lot of this. Most of them thought they had some idea, but they needed more practice. So I put 4 questions on the board for a quick check-in, and they ranged from where I thought they would be at to where I wanted them, where they would be working with numbers that had remainders and could they represent them as a fraction or a decimal. So I gave them 15 minutes to work on those questions and then very quickly evaluate where they actually were. What I noticed is that a lot of the faces changed. They thought they were in one place, they had a go at something without any explicit teaching, and they were in another place. And then I got them to shut their books and come back to the floor, because now we were going to do some explicit teaching. And it was the first lesson, so we had to look at some vocab and play some different games to get their brains thinking about division. And then after the lesson, I checked in with them. I got them to give me some thumbs, and then I looked at their books, and I liked what I saw. There was a lot of change for where they thought they were at in division, and then where they ended up without the teaching. They were quite reflective, and I liked what I saw, so I then put the effort in. And I took myself over to Canva, and then I whipped these things up. Quick and simple. They don't need to be flashy, they just need to have exactly what's necessary. And then over the week, we did a whole lot of learning, and this is what I saw. The divide got bigger and bigger, and after 2 days of practice, I had a big bunch right where I wanted, who were ready for the next step in the process, but I had to make sure. So I got them to self-assess themselves and give me a smiley face for where they were at in that sequence of learning. So while I took these guys, I paired the rest of them up so that they could do a little bit of teaching now, because I had a lot of them that were at this point here. But I wanted to be sure, could they really teach this to a peer? So I wanted to get these guys to teach it to these guys. And the hope was that these guys would be able to consolidate their learning, make sure that they have a solid understanding of the concept, while they also dragged these guys up with them through that explanation. Now, I didn't just send them off to do it. I wanted to check myself to make sure. So after going through their books and having a look at it, I was sure of which ones would actually teach the concept correctly. So while the top kids refined their learning and helped explain it and teach it to these guys, I took these little duckies and we busted out the blocks and we did some focused, targeted learning. And over the week, we would continue this cycle. I would do explicit teaching, I'd get some thumbs and some smiley faces, I'd get them to check in where they are, explain it to their peers and to me. Then they would practice it solo or in mixed ability groups or ability groups. Or they'd stay with me and then I would slowly, gradually release them for where they were at in their learning. And there were some hiccups along the way, but it gave me a very quick gauge on where they were at, but it also gave them a gauge of where they were at. They started to become very reflective of the work that they were doing. So the results, was it actually worth it? And I gotta say, big time, it was definitely worth it. Out of all the different self-assessment strategies that I've tried over the years, this one takes the cake. They became so conscious of their learning and were so eager to help each other grow. But the most exciting thing was how excited they were to grow. And I think the biggest part of it was that they had such an attainable goal to reach. I had so many kids walk up to me and tell me that they were here, but they were so close to getting here. Or that they looked at some specific questions and thought, I'm here, while other times I'm here. They were starting to notice what their strengths were and what they needed to work on. And then I had some tell me that they only needed a little bit more practice and then they'd be at this phase here. They just became so reflective of their learning. But I think the most profound impact was with my lowies. They struggle a lot, and division is not an easy concept for them. But when they looked in their books and they actually saw their progress with just a little bit of a smile, or when I put a little smile in there to tell them where they actually were, motivation skyrocketed. And it wasn't a result that I was expecting. I thought that I'd just end up with a quick self-assessment strategy that would help me get a better understanding of where they were at. But in reality, I ended up with something that has changed how motivated my students are to grow. And I think that is such a powerful tool, especially when kids are so disengaged lately. This strategy is definitely here to stay, but it can be very hard for students to actually be able to self-assess properly if they don't have a very solid understanding of what it is they're learning and the steps that they need to take to succeed. So to make sure that you can do this too, watch this video right here to see how I've set very clear learning goals for my kids and they can continue to grow.